Imagine this for a second. You're lying in a cold hospital bed. The room smells like disinfectant. The air feels heavy. The lights above you are too bright, but you barely have the strength to turn your head away from them. The only sound that keeps cutting through the silence is the steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor beside your bed. A few minutes ago, the doctors walked out after giving you the kind of news that changes a man forever. Stage 4 lymphoma. Not stage 1, not something small, not something they caught early. Stage 4. And even though the doctor tried to use careful words, even though he spoke in that calm, professional voice doctors use when they know your world is about to collapse, all you really heard was this: your life may now have an expiration date. Maybe a few months, maybe less. Maybe, if the treatment works, a little more time. But nothing is certain anymore. You're trying to breathe normally, trying to stay strong, trying not to let fear take over your whole body. But your chest feels tight, your mouth feels dry, and your mind keeps drifting to all the things you still wanted to do. The house you wanted to buy, the kids you and your wife talked about having, the vacations you promised her, the future you thought was guaranteed just because you were a good man who worked hard and stayed out of trouble. And right there beside you is your wife, Tasha. She's holding your hand so tightly it almost hurts. Her makeup is smeared from crying. Her shoulders are shaking. When she looks at you, her eyes are filled with tears, fear, and something that looks so much like love that you don't question it for even a second. She leans closer and whispers, "Baby, I'm right here. We're going to fight this together. I'm not going anywhere." And you believe her. Why wouldn't you? This is the woman you've loved for 8 years. The woman you worked double shifts for. The woman you put before yourself over and over again. The woman you defended when your friends said she could be selfish sometimes. The woman you stayed loyal to, even when life got hard. So when she says she's not going anywhere, you let those words settle into your heart like medicine. You hold on to them, because when a man is staring death in the face, he needs something solid to believe in. But here's the part that still shakes me every time I think about it. While you were lying in that hospital bed, weak from chemo, connected to machines, praying for one more chance at life, your wife was doing something else. She wasn't at home crying herself to sleep. She wasn't at church begging God to save your life. She wasn't staying strong for the man who had sacrificed everything for her. She was sleeping with your best friend. Not some random man, not a stranger, your best friend. A man who had been in your life for 15 years, a man who ate at your table, a man who stood next to you at your wedding, a man you trusted like a brother. And while you were fighting cancer, the two people closest to you were betraying you behind your back. This is the painful, raw, and deeply heartbreaking story of Marcus Thompson. Marcus was 34 years old, from Atlanta, Georgia. He was the kind of man people don't celebrate enough anymore. Quiet, dependable, hard-working, loyal to the core. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't rich, he wasn't the loudest person in the room. But if he loved you for real. He drove trucks during the day, worked private security at night, took whatever hours he could get. Not because he loved being exhausted, but because he believed in building a life with his wife. His wife, Tasha, had big dreams. She wanted to build her own clothing brand. She talked about African prints, curated sets, online launches, and one day opening a real boutique with her name on the front window. Marcus believed in all of it, because he believed in her. If Tasha had a dream, Marcus treated it like a mission. If she wanted inventory, he picked up extra shifts. If she needed help with rent, he covered it. If she got discouraged, he encouraged her. If she cried, he comforted her. If she wanted more from life, he gave more of himself. That was the kind of husband he was. And for a long time, it looked like love was enough. They'd been together since college. Everybody around them called them the perfect couple. Marcus was steady. Tasha was beautiful, ambitious, and magnetic. Together, they looked like the kind of couple social media loves. Handsome husband, pretty wife, matching smiles, anniversary dinners, soft captions, big dreams. But pictures don't tell the truth. Pictures don't show who's sacrificing more. Pictures don't show who's getting tired. Pictures don't show small resentments growing in the dark. And pictures definitely don't show betrayal waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. When Marcus first got sick, it started with little things. Fatigue. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Weight loss. Night sweats so bad he'd wake up with the sheets damp beneath him. A fever that kept coming and going, like a warning he didn't want to hear. At first, he blamed stress. Too much work, too little sleep, bad eating habits. He kept telling himself he'd be fine. But Tasha was the one who pushed him to see a doctor. She told him he looked too thin. She said his skin looked dull. She said something wasn't right. And when the diagnosis came, she cried harder than he did. That's what makes this story even more painful. In the beginning, she really did seem like the perfect wife. She stayed at the hospital every day, brought him food he liked, even when he barely had an appetite, rubbed his shoulders when the pain medicine wore off, prayed with him at night, looked him in the eye and said, "We're going to get through this." But slowly, very slowly, something changed. She started coming later, leaving earlier, checking her phone more often, answering questions with short, tired little sighs, acting irritated whenever Marcus needed reassurance. At first, Marcus blamed himself. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe watching your husband fight cancer changes you in ways nobody talks about. Then came one night, one single night, that ripped the blindfold off everything. Marcus had been in unbearable pain. The nurses gave him strong medication, and sometime after midnight, he drifted into a heavy, medicated sleep. Then, around 2:30 in the morning, his phone rang. It was Jamal, his best friend. And what Jamal said next destroyed whatever strength Marcus had left. Marcus and Tasha's story started years earlier at Clark Atlanta University. Marcus noticed her before he ever spoke to her. Everybody noticed Tasha. She had that kind of presence. She walked into a room and carried herself like she already knew exactly who she was. She laughed loudly, dressed well, and had a confidence that pulled people in. Marcus was the opposite. He was quiet, calm, more likely to stand on the edge of a room than in the center of it. He was the kind of guy who listened more than he talked, the kind who remembered details, the kind who gave his jacket away if someone said they were cold. They met at a campus party through mutual friends. Tasha was dancing, laughing, glowing in that effortless way some people do. Marcus was near the kitchen, talking to one of his boys, when she came over to grab a drink. Someone introduced them. She smiled and asked him why he looked so serious all the time. Marcus laughed and said, "Maybe I just don't trust parties." She smiled wider. "Then maybe you need the right company." That little exchange turned into a long conversation on a balcony. Then late-night texts. Then coffee. Then study sessions that somehow lasted longer than the studying. Then a relationship. Back then, their love felt simple. Marcus loved how driven she was. Tasha wasn't one of those people drifting through life. She had plans. She wanted more. She talked about fashion, branding, designing pieces that felt rooted in Black culture, but fresh and modern at the same time. She had vision. Tasha loved how safe Marcus felt. He didn't play games. He didn't make her chase him. He wasn't trying to impress every woman in the room. He was solid. He showed up when he said he would. He remembered birthdays, favorite foods, hard days, family drama, all of it. When college ended, life got real fast. Dreams met rent. Ambition met bills. Love met responsibility. Marcus found work driving trucks. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. Then, when things got tighter, he picked up night shifts doing security. Long hours, little sleep, constant pressure. But every time he thought about quitting one of the jobs, he looked at Tasha and kept going. Because Tasha still had that dream. She wanted to start an online boutique selling curated fashion pieces with African-inspired prints, accessories, and styling collections. She spent hours researching suppliers, colors, packaging, brand names. Marcus would come home, half dead tired, and still sit beside her on the couch, listening to her talk through logo ideas like it was the most important thing in the world. Sometimes she'd ask, "Do you really think I can do this?" And Marcus would answer the same way every time. "I know you can." He meant it too. He used savings to help her get started. He covered more of the bills so she could invest in inventory. He encouraged her when sales were slow. He reminded her of her own potential when she started doubting herself. When they got married in 2018, people said their vows felt real, not pretty, not performative, real. Marcus promised to protect her peace. Tasha promised to stand beside him through any storm. At the reception, Jamal stood right next to Marcus, grinning, glass raised high, telling everybody that Marcus had found the one. That's what hurts about betrayal sometimes. The seeds are standing right there in your happiest pictures, and you don't even know it. Jamal had been Marcus's friend since high school. They played ball together, failed tests together, got into dumb teenage trouble together. He was around for Marcus's worst breakups, family struggles, job changes, everything. If Marcus needed help moving, Jamal was there. If Jamal got into trouble, Marcus backed him up. They had history. Tasha and Jamal got along too. Nothing strange at first, just comfortable, natural, familiar. The kind of closeness that happens when your spouse and your best friend are both part of your everyday life. And that's what made everything so dangerous. Nobody watches closely when trust is already in the room. Years passed. Life settled into routine. Marcus worked, Tasha built. Jamal came around often. There were cookouts, birthdays, game nights, double conversations over takeout and drinks. It all looked normal. But when Marcus got sick, normal died fast. At first it was just exhaustion. Then it became frightening. He'd sit in the truck and feel his body shutting down. He'd pull over just to breathe. He'd wake up drenched in sweat. His clothes started fitting loose. Even his co-workers noticed. One night after security work, he came home and nearly collapsed in the bathroom. Tasha found him sitting on the floor, sweating, weak, trying to act like it was nothing. She knelt in front of him and said, "Marcus, this isn't normal. You need to go to the doctor." He resisted. A lot of men do. He kept saying he was just tired, but she insisted. Looking back, that part almost feels cruel in a different way, because she was the one who pushed him into the room where his whole life changed. After blood work, scans, referrals, more tests, and several long days of waiting, the answer came. Stage 4 lymphoma. Marcus said it felt like time stopped in that doctor's office. He could see the doctor's lips moving, but nothing made sense. Tasha was crying beside him. He just kept staring at one spot on the floor, like if he focused hard enough, reality might rearrange itself into something else. The doctor talked about treatment plans, aggressive chemotherapy, possible responses, risks, hope, statistics. But Marcus heard something deeper underneath it all. Your body is in a war now, and no matter how hard you fight, there are no guarantees. Emory University Hospital admitted him quickly. The first chemo round hit him like a train. His mouth tasted metallic. Food stopped making sense. He'd look at a plate and feel nauseous before taking a bite. His bones hurt. His skin felt strange. His energy disappeared. Then came the hair. It started falling out in the shower, on the pillow, in his hands. A man already watching his body betray him doesn't forget the moment he realizes he no longer even looks like himself. Tasha was there through those first weeks. She really was. She sat with him through infusions, brought blankets from home, played old songs on her phone, fed him little bites when he was too weak to hold utensils steadily, texted family updates, prayed out loud when Marcus was too tired to form words. One night, after a brutal day of treatment, Marcus whispered, "I'm scared." Tasha leaned forward, touched his face and said, "You don't have to be strong every second. I'm here." And in that moment, he believed he was loved. That's what betrayal destroys the most. Not just a relationship, but the memory of what once felt safe. By week 4, the cracks began to show. Tasha still came, but not the same way. She started arriving late. Instead of coming in the afternoon, she'd come near evening. Instead of staying for hours, she'd stay 30 minutes, sometimes less. Her attention was scattered. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she'd turn it over or silence it. When Marcus asked who kept texting, she'd say things like, "vendor issues," or "customer questions," or "I'm just handling business stuff." Sometimes she looked tired, sometimes distracted, sometimes oddly impatient, like the hospital room itself irritated her. Once Marcus said, gently, "You okay?" And she sighed before saying, "Marcus, I'm trying, I really am. But this is a lot. The house, the business, the hospital, all of it. I'm doing everything alone." Even in that bed, Marcus felt guilty. He was the one with cancer, and somehow he still found himself apologizing. "I'm sorry," he told her. She rubbed her forehead and said, "I know, I'm just tired." That sentence sat inside him longer than it should have. I'm just tired. Not, "We're gonna get through this." Not, "How are you feeling?" Just, "I'm tired." Jamal started showing up more around that time. At first, it seemed like a blessing. He came by the hospital with protein drinks and jokes, tried to lighten the mood, told Marcus about basketball, neighborhood gossip, old memories. He helped with errands too. Sometimes he'd say he was checking on Tasha, making sure she had groceries, helping with little things around the house. Marcus appreciated it. That's what brothers do, right? One afternoon, Jamal sat near Marcus's bed while Marcus stared out the window and said, "You're gonna beat this, bro. I know you are." Marcus gave a tired smile. "I'm trying." Jamal nodded. "Tasha's been stressed too. I've been helping where I can." Marcus said, "I appreciate that." If only he knew what those words would mean later. As the weeks dragged on, Marcus began to notice things he couldn't quite explain. Tasha smelled different sometimes, not like hospital air or home, like she'd been somewhere else first. She dressed nicer for short visits than she used to. Sometimes, she seemed emotionally absent even when sitting right there. If Marcus reached for her hand, she'd hold it, but with a strange emptiness. Then there were the excuses. "I have to leave early. I've got a supplier call. I'm exhausted. Jamal said he'd check on the house. I can't do this all day today." There was always something. Marcus tried not to let paranoia take root. He told himself, illness can make a person sensitive. He told himself, chemo was messing with his mind. He told himself, fear was making him overthink ordinary things. But deep down, something inside him had started whispering that the ground under his marriage was no longer solid. The night everything shattered was rainy and cold. Marcus had been in severe pain all day. The nurses adjusted his medication twice. By midnight, he was groggy, nauseous, and barely aware of the time. He remembers Tasha leaving earlier that evening, kissing his forehead quickly and saying she needed to get some rest. Around 2:30 in the morning, his phone vibrated on the bedside tray. He almost didn't answer. But when he saw Jamal's name, he picked up. His voice was weak. "Hello?" On the other end, Jamal sounded strange. Not drunk, not casual. Nervous. "Marcus, you awake?" "Barely. What's going on?" Silence. Then Jamal exhaled hard. "Bro, I can't keep this inside anymore." Marcus frowned. Even in his medicated state, something in his chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" Another pause. Then came the sentence that split his life in half. "Tasha and I, we've been seeing each other." Marcus thought maybe he misheard him. Maybe the medicine distorted the words. Maybe the pain was making sounds blur together. Maybe this was some nightmare his body had manufactured out of fear. So he asked, very slowly, "What did you just say?" Jamal's voice cracked. "We've been messing around for about 2 months. 2 months. That meant while Marcus was fighting to stay alive, they had already crossed the line. Marcus felt the room go cold. Not physically, spiritually. Like something sacred had just been ripped out of him. He gripped the phone harder and whispered, "You're lying. I wish I was. How long?" "I told you, about 2 months." "How?" Jamal was crying now, actually crying. "It started when she was venting about everything. She felt alone, scared. I was just there. One night we had drinks, we talked, and it happened. Then it kept happening." Marcus closed his eyes. Every machine in the room seemed louder now. The IV line in his arm suddenly felt unbearable. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. With a broken voice, he asked the question no man should ever have to ask. "So while I'm in here fighting for my life, you've been sleeping with my wife?" Jamal didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. His silence confirmed everything. Marcus whispered, "Why are you telling me this now?" Jamal said something that made it even worse. "Because she told me tonight she doesn't know if she wants to stay with you if you get worse." That sentence hit Marcus harder than the diagnosis ever had. Not if you die. Not if things become impossible. If you get worse. Meaning she was already preparing herself to detach from a man who was still breathing, still hoping, still fighting. Marcus felt tears slide into his ears as he stared at the ceiling. He wasn't sobbing. It was deeper than that. It was the body's response to a pain too large for sound. Finally, he said, "Don't ever call me again." Then he hung up. The next morning, the sky outside the hospital window was grey. Marcus hadn't slept. He had just lain there, staring at nothing, replaying every visit, every excuse, every delayed text, every moment he had blamed himself for her distance. When Tasha walked in, she had coffee in one hand and a soft smile on her face. That fake, gentle smile. "Hey, baby," she said. "How are you feeling this morning?" Marcus turned his head and looked at her. Not with anger first, with disbelief, like he was looking at a stranger wearing his wife's face. Then he said 4 words. "I know everything." Tasha froze. Not confused, not curious. Frozen. That told him all he needed to know. The coffee cup trembled slightly in her hand. "What are you talking about?" Marcus kept staring. "Jamal called me last night." The color drained from her face. At first, she denied it. Fast, desperate, sloppy. No, Marcus, whatever he said, he's lying. He's probably confused, Stop." His voice was weak, but sharp enough to cut through the room. She started crying immediately. Not the deep kind of crying born from remorse, the panicked kind. The crying of someone whose secret is no longer safe. Marcus asked, "How long?" She covered her mouth and shook her head. "How long, Tasha?" "A few weeks." she whispered. He stared at her. Jamal said 2 months. She slid into the chair and broke down. It just happened. Marcus let out a bitter, painful laugh. Nothing just happens for 2 months. She kept talking through tears. I was scared, Marcus. I was lonely. You were always here, always sleeping, always in pain, and I didn't know how to handle it. I felt like I was losing you already. There are moments when excuses become more insulting than the betrayal itself. Marcus looked at her and said, So your answer to me having cancer was to sleep with my best friend. She cried harder. I wasn't thinking clearly. No, he said. You were thinking very clearly. You just weren't thinking about me. She tried to reach for his hand. He pulled it away. Then Marcus asked the question that would stay with him for the rest of his life. While I was in here, praying not to die, were you in bed with him? Tasha couldn't answer. That silence was enough. Marcus felt something inside himself shut down. He had spent weeks fighting disease. But this was something different. This was the death of trust, the death of innocence, the death of the version of love he used to believe in. He pointed toward the door. Get out. Marcus, please, get out. Please, just let me explain. There is nothing to explain. Her voice cracked. I love you. Marcus looked at her with tears in his eyes and said, No, you don't. You loved what I did for you. You loved what I gave you. You loved having somebody loyal. But if you loved me, you would not have done this while I was fighting for my life. She stood there crying, hoping he'd soften. He didn't. Get out, he said again, quieter this time. And don't come back. When she left the room, Marcus turned his face toward the wall and cried harder than he had the day he was diagnosed. Not because he was afraid of dying anymore, but because sometimes the people you would die for prove they were never really yours. The weeks after that were brutal. Cancer didn't pause for heartbreak. Chemo still came. Pain still came. Nausea still came. Fatigue still swallowed whole days. Fear still visited at night. But now Marcus had to carry betrayal on top of all of it. There were nights he stared at the dark hospital ceiling thinking about Tasha and Jamal together and felt like he couldn't breathe. Nights he questioned everything, every memory, every promise, every anniversary, every I love you. Nights he wondered if she had ever really been faithful in spirit, even before this. Some of the nurses noticed the change in him. He became quieter, harder, older somehow. One nurse named Denise, who had cared for oncology patients for years, once adjusted his blanket and gently asked, You okay, Marcus? He looked at her and said, Not even a little. She nodded, like someone who understood that answer better than most people ever could. His mother started visiting more after that. So did his sister. The family slowly learned enough to understand that something terrible beyond the cancer had happened, even if Marcus never told the whole story right away. Jamal texted several times. Apologies, long messages, excuses dressed up as guilt. Marcus never replied. Tasha wrote letters, called, voicemail after voicemail, said she made a terrible mistake, said she was broken too, said she wanted another chance, said stress had pushed her into a dark place. Marcus listened to one voicemail and deleted the rest, because once a person betrays you at your weakest point, the wound goes deeper than romance. It becomes moral, spiritual, existential. You stop asking whether they regret it. You start asking what kind of person could do it in the first place. Then something changed in Marcus. The pain didn't go away. The betrayal didn't shrink. But one morning after a particularly hard treatment session, He looked at himself in the mirror in the hospital bathroom. Bald, thinner, eyes tired, face hollow, and realized something. If he gave up now, then cancer would take his body and betrayal would take his spirit. He couldn't allow both. He started fighting in a new way, not for Tasha, not for some picture-perfect future, not to prove anything to Jamal, for himself, for the man he still might become if he survived. He followed every treatment plan with discipline. He forced himself to eat when it felt impossible. He walked hospital laps when his legs trembled. He prayed with honesty instead of performance. He let the pain strip him down until all that remained was truth. And truth said this: he had been betrayed, he had been broken, but he was not finished. Month after month, the battle continued. Scans, blood work, needles, side effects, fear, hope, more fear. Then finally, after 6 long, brutal months, the doctors sat him down again. This time the room felt different. The oncologist smiled before speaking. And those are the kinds of smiles people never forget. The treatment had worked. Marcus was in remission. The cancer was gone. For a moment he just stared. Then he cried. Not clean movie tears, real ones, the kind dragged out of the body by survival. He had beaten cancer, but he hadn't walked out unchanged. He survived the disease. What remained was learning how to survive the betrayal. When Marcus finally left the hospital, people celebrated him like a miracle. Family hugged him tight. Friends said he was strong. Church people called him blessed. Everybody focused on the victory. And in one way, they were right. He was a miracle. He was strong. He had come back from something that could have buried him. But survival doesn't erase damage. Marcus was healing physically, yes. His appetite slowly returned. His weight came back little by little. His energy improved. He started sleeping in his own bed again. Started taking short walks outside. Started driving around Atlanta just to feel normal life moving again. But emotionally, he was shattered. Because the cancer had attacked his body, Tasha and Jamal had attacked his soul. People don't talk enough about what betrayal does to a person after the crisis ends. Everybody expects gratitude. Everybody expects perspective. Everybody expects you to just be happy you survived. But what if you survived and still lost the 2 people you trusted most? What if every quiet moment brings back the image of them together? What if every memory from your marriage now feels infected? What if your own home doesn't feel safe anymore because lies were living there before you even knew it? Tasha tried more than once to come back. She showed up crying, sent messages through mutual friends, wrote long texts about regret, guilt, loneliness, confusion, trauma. Every word people use when consequences finally arrive. She told Marcus it was the biggest mistake of her life. She said she was ashamed. She said she hated herself for what she did. She said she was under pressure and emotionally falling apart. She said she wanted to rebuild. She said she still loved him. But sometimes there are things love cannot revive. Marcus met her one final time in public, just to say what needed to be said clearly. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. Tasha looked smaller somehow. Not physically, spiritually. Like guilt had finally introduced her to herself. She cried through most of the conversation. Marcus stayed calm. And when she finished begging, he said something that ended it for good. You didn't just cheat on me. You betrayed me when I was at my weakest. When I needed loyalty the most, you gave me humiliation. When I needed comfort, you gave yourself permission. I can forgive you one day for my own peace, but I will never trust you again. Tasha covered her face and sobbed. Marcus stood up and said, "Some things don't get fixed. They just end." Then he walked away. The divorce happened not long after. Fast, clean, final. No dramatic reunion, No emotional reversal. No last-minute miracle for the marriage. Just paperwork and the quiet death of a bond that should have lasted longer. As for Jamal, Marcus never truly spoke to him again. 15 years of friendship ended without closure. And maybe that was the closure. Because not every betrayal deserves one final conversation. Some people lose access to you the moment they prove they were never worthy of your trust. The part of this story that stays with me the most isn't only the cheating, it's the timing. That's what makes it so brutal. Marcus wasn't out at clubs disrespecting his marriage. He wasn't neglecting his wife by choice. He wasn't living selfishly. He was in a hospital bed, fighting cancer. Weak, bald, afraid, hurting, trying to survive. And in that exact season, the season when loyalty should have become even more sacred, the woman he loved and the man he called brother chose themselves over his pain. That kind of betrayal is hard to even put into words. Because some betrayals don't just break trust, they break your understanding of human decency. They make you question whether people mean anything when they say, "I love you." They make you wonder if sacrifice is even seen. They make you look back at old memories and ask yourself if the signs were there all along. And if I'm being honest with you, this story made my heart heavy. Because Marcus didn't just survive cancer, he survived abandonment in the middle of it. He survived the kind of heartbreak that could make a person bitter for life. And still, somehow, he kept going. That doesn't mean he was okay. That doesn't mean he got over it quickly. That doesn't mean he never cried when nobody was around. It just means he refused to let other people's ugliness become the end of his story. And that matters a lot. Because sometimes winning doesn't look like getting your marriage back. Sometimes winning looks like walking away with your dignity. Sometimes healing isn't reconciliation. Sometimes healing is finally accepting that the people who hurt you are not the people who get to define the rest of your life. So let me ask you something honestly. If you were in Marcus's shoes, if you were lying in that hospital bed, weak, scared, fighting cancer, and you found out your wife was cheating with your best friend while you were trying to stay alive, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven her? Would you have tried to save the marriage? Would you have confronted Jamal face to face? Or would you have done exactly what Marcus did? Cut them both off and walk away for good? I really want to know. Because stories like this hit people differently. Some people believe in second chances no matter what. Other people believe there are lines you cross only once. So drop your honest thoughts in the comments. Not the polished answer, the real one. And if this story touched you, if it made you angry, if it made you reflect on loyalty, love, and what people owe each other in hard times, then hit the like button. It really helps this channel grow. And if you want more real, raw, emotional betrayal stories like this, stories about love, deception, survival, and the painful truths people hide behind closed doors, then subscribe to Betrayed Souls and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Because these stories are heavy, but they matter. They remind us that loyalty is rare, that character shows up most clearly in somebody's worst season, and that not everybody who says, "I'm here for you," actually means it. Take care of your heart out there. Protect your peace. And never ignore the people who stand by you when life gets ugly, because those are the real ones. This is Betrayed Souls, and I'll see you in the next story.